Hey, it's Kevin DeWitt here. Welcome to another plugin knowledge session. This week we're going to have a look at a new plugin from UAD and Brainworx called the BX Master Desk. This plugin was developed by Brainworx, and you can get it in a native style as well, so you don't have to be on UAD for this one. I'm doing the UAD version because it's just simple for me to get the trial in UAD. Because I can just do it with a click of a button. Very simple. You could get a demo from Brainworx directly. So even though this is provided by UAD, it's really a Brainworx plugin. And, it's just been ported across to UAD as well. So you can use it in your UAD system using the DSP on board. So this plugin here is supposed to basically take the mastering process that can be quite complicated and make it simple. You get one plugin, you dial in your volume, you dial in some settings, and you've got your master. So I'm not going to be a big judge of this because obviously I do mastering, and I prefer personally to have my own control of what things do as opposed to just dialing in plugins that do these presets. But I'm also not going to I'm not going to sit here and say that these plugins are terrible and should never be used because, I might have used these years ago before I knew how to do my own mastering and would have done it to potentially save money on mastering. So I'm just going to give you a demonstration through it, bit of a walkthrough tutorial. And if you want to get this plugin and use it to save on costs of mastering or the time to learn how to do all of the individual components of mastering, then that's your choice, and I'll be very happy for you if you're getting great results out of it. I guess personally, like I said, I wouldn't probably use it, but then again, if I was deciding between using this plugin or using an online mastering service, I'd be tempted to go with the plugin because at least you still have control over it, whereas an online mastering service, you're relying on their software to automatically do some calculations and make it sound good. Whereas this one here, you at least have some control and you have the ability to adjust it based on your song and the style of song you're doing right there and then, and also adjust how hard and how much volume you want to get out of it. So I would probably lean towards the plugin compared to a online mastering service. But again, that's just me, and I have nothing against online mastering services either. They are for a purpose and they're for people to use, and I will not tell you not to use them. That is totally your choice. So anyway, as I said, I'm not going to have any bias here. I'm just going to run through the tutorial, show you the plugin, give you some sound sample, and you can be the judge of whether you like the plugin or not, and we'll go from there. So let's get in there and check it out. All right, so we've got the plugin here. As you can see, it says it's from Brainworx. Nice, simple sort of layout, big knobs and simple controls. And it's obviously trying to look like a piece of hardware that you might have in front of you at your desk if you're a mastering engineer or something like that. But you can see that it's taken away a lot of the complexity and has tried to incorporate most of the things you will do in mastering within the plugin itself, so you don't have to go and do all of this individual stuff one thing at a time. So I've just placed it here on my main mix bus here. You could obviously do this in a separate mastering session if you've already bounced your mix out. I've just thrown it on the end of the mix here just because there's a high chance that that's what a lot of people are going to do with a plugin like this, because if you're going to take this simple approach to mastering, then there's a fair chance that you're going to just want to do it in your mix. So just obviously be aware that this could have a high CPU load to it. So you, if you're already maxing out your CPU, throwing this on at the end may take you over the level. So you might have to freeze tracks and things like that. Or as I said, bounce out your song to a separate stereo audio file, then bring it into another project just to do this last mastering step and just call it mastering. as a separate project. All right, so Brainworx suggests how you should use the plugin, and I'll just tell you their process. I mean, basically, they're just saying that a very quick process here is just play your music, turn up the volume, bring up the dynamic range, VU to somewhere between 8 and 6 dB. So we're looking on here. So this is our dynamic range. So they're suggesting that you should be between 8 and 6 on here. And obviously, if we were in red here, that's probably not a good setting there. We're going to be getting a lot of distortion and things like that. And yeah, they're suggesting that a 6 is really a loud CD master and an 8 is better for streaming, etc. But then you might want to even go lower than that, because I'm going to, out of curiosity, I do want to compare the volume of this with some other plugins. Okay, so they're targeting that you set your volume to that, and then you dial in your foundation to your liking. Okay, so that's this setting here. And then you adjust your tone stack, which I'm guessing is this section here. Oh, so they've even got it numbered. Isn't that nice? So 1 volume, 2 foundation, 3 tone. All right, so let's start simply with number 1. Okay, so I've brought the volume of my track down here just so we can push this without getting too loud out of our ears. So if we bypass, this is what I've got. Now, as an example, what we're seeing here is we're pretty low on the register here. And we're sitting very low on the LUFS register here in levels as well. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is let's bring the plugin in while we're playing. Okay, and instantly we can see where we're sitting. So we push the volume. I'm just going to back that down a bit more. Okay, so that's a bit hot. So we're sitting in the green. I'm pushing it closer to 6 just for interest sakes. Just for interest sakes here, I'm going to push it closer to 6. So it's a bit hotter. So we've got our volume there. We've dialed that in. That's pretty simple. Okay, so we've done a boost of our volume. And now we're talking about setting our foundation. So the foundation adjusts the tonality of the mix. So we've got low end versus treble, and set a nice bass foundation. So a higher value gives us more bass heavy foundation, which sounds pretty big for most genres. So let's check that out. So that gets really, really woolly there and very tinny. So what I noticed first off, it's a very broad stroke there. So it's not, this is obviously not a EQ setting. That's where our tone stack is going to come in. But this is leaning our mix towards bass compared to brightness. And you can hear how much it changes. I mean, suddenly even just going that far there really dulls the mix down. Makes it very bright. So I'm going to lean it towards the warmer side at the moment, but I'm keeping in mind that when I do that, because at the moment I don't like what it sounds like, I'm going to try and help that out with the next step, which is our tone stack here. All right, so in our next step, we obviously talk about this tone stack. So you've got a bass, mid, treble, and some presence. So let's just play with each of these settings in the tone and see what we get. Turn it up a little bit louder. Okay, that's a lot nicer bass than I get out of this foundation. I just want you to keep in mind that I'm using headphones and my accuracy on this is not going to be great. So I'm not trying to get a perfect master here. I'm just sort of trying to show you the settings and dial in something that sounds fairly reasonable in my headphones, but it's not going to be what I would do in mastering most likely. I'm actually going to start that again. I'm going to change my foundation the other way. And now I'm going to dial in my bass. Nope, not liking that either. Okay, so they're the settings I sort of ended up here. I'm not 100% happy with what's going on here. It's given me some control, but it is very broad strokes. It's very hard to dial in this foundation compared to the tone here, but I guess it's something that over time you would really adapt to and get used to. That's the recommended steps to take from the very first quick run through. Right, now we've got some optional settings here. So let's run through all of the settings. So we've got a comp mix here. So this adjusts, so they've defaulted to 93%, which is what they recommend. If you set it to 100%, that is total compressed signal only. And taking it down to 0 obviously turns it off. So that's fully compressed. And that is compression off. We lost some volume there, obviously. Okay, so let's leave it at 93. It's there, but the difference between 93 and 100 is not really massive. Let's have a play with the de-esser now. You can see you can get that hitting in on the cymbals. Can't even hear that. Okay, it's indicating it's doing something with the de-esser, but I'm not hearing it. And when I put it in solo mode, I don't hear the results of it. I mean, I've got a full ball there, which is why it's responding to the cymbals. I guess you really need a lot more need for the de-esser to get that to kick in. It's not really kicking in for me enough to be present. All right, so the compressor link setting here basically determines that if it's unlinked, it responds independently to the left and right channels. So if there's a peak in the audio on the left or right, it will compress that channel alone. If it's linked, it will compress both channels at the same amount of compression, even if the peak only happens in one or the other side. So that really, in theory, keeps your balance correct, but then it can cause some unwanted pumping on one side that didn't need to happen. So let's see if we get a difference. I'm going to push this pretty hard just to try and get some obvious stuff going on. See, it looks different. And then if you link them, they're identical. Let's try the de-esser again while it's hot. Still can't hear that. Okay, then we have this limiter turbo setting. So reading through the manual, what happens is this plugin here automatically has a limiter on the end of the chain that you have no ability to adjust here, and it's doing a default boost of 1 dB. So if we wanted to go even hotter and push our mix harder into the limiter and get it more squashed and more louder, if we engage this limiter turbo, it will go to a boost of 2 dB as opposed to 1 dB. But then you'll see there, this output trim is set to 0, which I would have backed off normally, but let's just leave it at 0 for now. As soon as you engage that, it drops it down to -0.2 because I'm guessing it's going to allow for more of the intersample peaks, and because you're pushing it 2 dB hotter and crushing it into the limiter a lot more, the chance of going over is a lot more greater. So they've reduced it down to -0.2. I still think that is too much, but you can override it and push it back up if you so wish. So we could do that. So let's just switch between the two. Remember, we're pushing really hot at the moment. Let's put that to 0.2. So you can obviously get that. It's subtle. I would have thought they might have got harder than that, but it works fine. All right, then we got our 4 compressor modes here. So they don't talk much about each of the settings other than 1 is the hardest compressor, 4 is the lightest, and then 2 and 3 are obviously in between. So they don't really go into detail. So let's just play it and listen. You can see the amount of compression changes there a little bit. So you can hear a difference. It is fairly, I'm going to say subtle, but it's not real subtle. The difference between 1 and 4 is fairly big. And when I say big in a mastering sense, it's not big in a mixing sense, like you could do really extreme with mixing. But you've got 2 and 3, obviously when you step between them, changes slightly. So if you step between them, you get a small difference between each one of them, which you can hear if you listen close enough, but the differences are not night and day. But between 1 and 4, there is a fairly big difference in the mastering sense. Okay, so we've got a THD setting here, which is our total harmonic distortion, which is a distortion that is imparted by analog audio equipment in various degrees depending on the hardware that you've got. The default setting here is -60, and we can push it either way to reduce that or get more out of it. So let's see if we can hear the difference with that. So again, another subtle sort of setting there. I'm not hearing too much difference using my headphones. On a better system, I might hear a lot more difference there, but I'm not hearing a massive amount in there at all. We obviously have our output trim here, which I said, so we can set our maximum level there. They're suggesting that it's quite common to set it to -2. You know, generally, if you want to go with Apple mastering volumes, you go down to -1 even. And you've got your input output, so you can switch the meter from input and output to see the values of what is coming in and going out. All right, so we've got this mid-side section here. So let's check that out. Okay, so the reason they call this mid-side is because they're using sort of mid-side techniques, but they're not giving you the ability to adjust that settings. It's using it in its own way. So the mono maker here is basically what it does is, depending on the setting that you set this to, so the frequency, anything below this frequency, it is making it more mono. So it's quite common in mixing or mastering or something like that, where you may want to bring the bass into the center and not have so much into the side, which can help your mix be nice, loud, balanced, and just not bass rumbling around everywhere. It's focused into the center of your mix. Obviously, if you go very high, up to 300 hertz, it can start to make your song sound a little bit weird. So we'll play with that in a minute, and it'll reduce your stereo field a bit there if you go too high. But it's quite common to make sure that your bass is in control there. But again, that also depends on how you mix the song. If you were very detailed in your bass in the mix and kept it in the center anyway, then this control is probably not going to really have much impact on your mix at all. Then you've got this stereo enhance here, which they're saying it uses some intelligence to use various EQ settings and things like that to enhance your stereo field or reduce it without creating boomy. So without increasing the bass width and all that sort of stuff. So that's why it's sort of using mid-side, but it also sounds like it's doing a bit of sort of multi-band style stereo enhancing and things like that. So it's using some technology in the background that you don't have the control over to just do this width intelligently. So let's play it with both of those. So you can hear when I go to 300, things start to come in. So it does start to get a little bit narrow and obviously is a bit too high. So you could hear there, really, the mono maker was not having any, I wasn't noticing any great impact to it until I pushed it too high, and then it was bringing in instruments that I didn't want brought in to the center anyway. And that's pretty much because the bass is very well controlled in this mix anyway to be down the center. And then you got your stereo enhance, and you would have heard there, we bring it that way, it became very mono, everything was pulled into the center. And if I went the other way, it was pretty much spot on that the bass did not sort of bloom out. It stayed in the center, and primarily I heard the guitars come up very loud in the left and right. So that can be very handy. Obviously, you wouldn't go to the extremes. You'd probably be very subtle, but that can be handy if you just need a little bit of stereo width there as well. Okay, so we've got our resonance filter section here. So they have basically decided on a few frequencies, in 2 frequencies in the high, 2 frequencies in the low, that they've determined are generally problematic areas that they like to control when mastering. Obviously, it's making some assumptions here that these are the frequencies that are going to be the problems. And so basically, if you want to filter out some of these frequencies, you can set it to 160 or 315. And on the high, 3150 or 3.15K and 6.666K. And if we turn on the auto solo control, when we hold the knob to one side or the other, we'll get to hear just that frequency. So that is what it will filter out. Or that one. Okay, so they're the settings there. We're just going to do one last test. Obviously, you can see what they are. They're very, very broad strokes there. So all these settings are very broad strokes here. This one here, obviously, you have very little control over other than to either engage it or don't engage it. So now I'm just going to set this back to here, and I just want to compare the volume. So let's get it in the range that they suggest. We've got a digital value here as well. Okay, so it's a bit hotter than the 10. So it's sitting about 8 on the VMUT here, and on the levels. Sitting at 8. Let's make sure we've got our settings to CD. So if we want to go streaming, instantly it says it's too loud. So they definitely are pushing it quite hot with this. So all the other programs that recommend things these days usually want it a lot lower. So I would probably start that again. I would push it to about that level there on the meters here. Unfortunately, levels, the program, it thinks it's too hot, but I think it can be a little bit too restrictive. Let's put it to CD. So the one thing it is complaining about levels here is the intersample peaks, true peaks. So it's saying we are going over by at least 0.2, and hence the reason this has 0. If I reduce this down, and I'll go to -1, which is what my normal setting would be, and we'll do that again. Now we can quite easily stay in the green on here. And we could push it a bit up higher. Maybe not that much. Could go about there. That's a nice level there. It's very dynamic. It's not crushed. You could reduce your compressor there, or go a bit hotter, whatever you want. Okay, so there you go. That shows you the levels there and things like that. So we can get in that range there. If we drop our level down here, that'll keep us in the right ballpark there. So there you go. There's the Brainworx BX Master Desk. As I said, I'm running it on UAD, so you can buy it in the UAD version. You can buy it in the native Brainworx version if you don't have a UAD system, or you just don't have any spare DSP on your UAD and want to run this independently, you can. So I've shown the plugin in a mix, but I've done it in a fashion that's in a mastering realm there. You can obviously load it into separate mastering software or anything you want. If you want to do it as a separate mastering process, that's totally up to you. So as you can see, the plugin is reasonably simple. It's not, it's not real basic. You need to have some knowledge and idea of what you're doing with it, but it takes away a lot of the hassle of all the steps and all the things you need to know about how to master songs. So, check it out on your next mix if you're interested in this and you want to master your own songs quickly and you're not sure how to do it. Try the plugin out and see if you get the results you're after. So hopefully this video has been helpful. Check it out. Leave a comment below. Let me know what your thoughts are on it. If you have any questions, let me know. And thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.